Tribal sexuality. Welcome to part 2 of our series on the 3 sexual streams. The tribe are the best huggers, the warmest, most sensual kissers. They'll hold you so tight that you can smell their armpits, and they can smell if you're one of them because you've both eaten the same food all together. So you all stink of garlic or saucisson, and you all worship the same football team and support the same god and call each other by these sweet, lovey-dovey nicknames. The tribe don't necessarily say much. As you can see, the tribal stream doesn't go directly to the throat like the 2 other streams, but they are there for each other and they to support each other through thick or thin. That's the bond, that's the bargain, the contract, the marriage of the relationship, the agreement to be there for each other physically, materially. It's not so much about how exciting and different the sex is, like the collective stream of desire. And it's not so much about this passionate, beautiful, romantic exchange of ideas and spiritual communion that the individual is looking for to be infatuated in love. In the tribe, very often, arranged marriages, you learn to love the other person over time. And what comes first is your ability to hold and support each other through the challenges of material life, survival, creating and maintaining a family, building society. You can see in the way that these streams are arranged in the Bodygraph, the tribal is the closest to the center and connects directly into the heart. Then there's the individual in the middle, the freak who doesn't fit into the tribe, and yet the tribe make place for those strange, freaky individuals to come in because they provide variety for the gene pool. And on the outside is the collective, what we call normal or cool in our huge, massive, multicultural, multinational societies. You can see that the collective stream does not go through the heart. And many of these huge collective multinational organizations that decide what's cool or hot or not and make the rules that everybody should follow in order to be normal and fit in, they often don't take into account neither the individual and especially not the tribe. There's this conflict. The tribe want to maintain their traditional rules and roles and principles, and the collective say, hey, it's time to move on. This is the future. This is the way we're all going now. So why don't you let go of all those old customs that don't make any sense anymore and just fit in? But of course, the tribe don't want to, because then they'd be at risk of losing their identity. And it's true that many old customs don't make any sense. You can see that the tribe doesn't go through the head centers. There's nothing logical or that necessarily makes any sense about old tribal traditions and customs. Sometimes there are, but it's like that story of the kid who asks his mum, why do you always cut the left leg of the roast chicken off before you put it in the pan? Mum says, I don't know. Kid asks the grandma, oh, well, we just didn't have a pan that was big enough for the whole thing when your mum was growing up. So we did that, and the tribe will repeat something for generations, and it becomes a part of their customs and identity, which they really value. Now, when it comes to tribal sex, let us look at sting. Tribal sex, first of all, there's the reproductive aspect, and the channel 59.6 of mating is in the tribal defense circuit. We call it the defense circuit because there are 2 sides to survival, and one survival defense mechanism is simply to make more. The more there are of you, the more chance there is of some of you surviving. And the other side of it, of course, in the mirror to this 59.6 is the 27.50, the channel of traditional values, the fear of falling into traditional roles, the one that makes the laws, that decides how to educate the children. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You can think of his organization, Children's Health Defense. Bill Gates, on the other hand, also has that same channel. And they obviously don't seem to agree about the right way to nurture and look after children. Nonetheless, it's a place where both of them play their funny role in the theatre of the world. And although this 59.6 isn't part of the stream that we're talking about, it's a extra channel. These two, the 5027, 59.6, are an extra little unit within the body graph to do with reproduction and looking after children. And we have to look at them because this is where you can see sexuality is generated from the sacral. If you have a couple with this as an electromagnetic connection, where one of them's got the 59, the other one's got the 6, that's a very fertile relationship. And any mating could lead to reproduction. So be careful. The 6 in the emotional system represents the cervix. It's a diaphragm that's open to intimacy or not. And anybody with this 59.6 will go through phases of, say, 3-4 days where they're really warm and cuddly and intimate, and you feel emotionally close. And then they'll gradually, bit by bit, close up and need to be on their own for a bit and not want to be touched, maybe even not like the feeling of being touched by the one they love. So bear that in mind. If that's part of you or your partner, you're gonna have these opening and closing moments, and there's no need to interpret that as something wrong with the relationship or to try and blame it on the other or yourself when you're not so open to touch and cuddles. Otherwise, what really defines tribal sexuality, as we said, is holding each other tightly, closely, holding and breathing. In the 1949 here is where we connect with animals, with mammals. So pets are going to be very important to Johnny Depp here. The 19 is the pressure to get your material needs, food, territory, sex met. And it's where we, with our 49, can provide the needs for animals of security and food. And in exchange, the 49 is also the butcher, the sacrificer. There's an old bargain there between us and mammals, which needs to be honored and treated with respect. Obviously, putting chickens in a battery farm is not honoring our side of this bargain of giving them a comfortable, secure, nice life. If somebody only has the 19, then they really resonate with mammals and they'll often want to be vegetarians. And especially if they've got this open spleen, this immune system that can't process things as quickly, then they'll be better off focusing on vegetarian or fish and chicken as part of their alimentation. My partner Julie's just got the 49, so they're very sensitive to the needs of animals. Pets are really important to them. Thinking again about that sense of touch. When a tribal person is upset, having a cat or a dog to stroke is really soothing for their system, as well as they're going to need cuddles from you as their partner. And if you're somebody that's very individual like me, then maybe cuddles are not as important for you. It's more important for you to talk and connect like that. And if you're a collective and experiential, it's more important for you to share doing things together. But for the tribe, the key to maintaining harmony and support in your relationships is the level of touch and contact. When tribal people stop touching each other, that's when you know there's a problem in the relationship. It's how we know, me and Julie, when there's a problem in our relationship. And then coming back together, just making that first contact, holding hands, cuddling, holding each other is the most important step in making up with each other. Tribal people, as long as they can maintain some kind of touch, some kind of contact, even when you're having an argument or discussing something tough, even just holding hands or keeping an arm around the shoulder, it's the primary glue of your relationship. As we said, the tribal circuit doesn't go directly through the throat. The touch, the contact, the smelling each other, is the first thing to restore in any relationship issues, as well as being the first sign that something's going wrong. The 49 is the gate of principles. If one of you has that and the other, I don't have anything in particular in that tribal circuit aspect, so I have to obey Julie's principles for the harmony of our relationship. There's no other way about it, whether it's the man or the woman. Obeying the 49's values and principles is going to be really key, really important. There was a time when Julie was into non-waste, right? No rubbish. So if I so dared as to bring a plastic bag into the house, it was over, no sex for a week. Yeah, love, honor, and obey. And don't forget the obey. It's all part of that here, sharing the same values and principles. An individual like Frida Kahlo isn't going to give a shit if you eat the same food on a Sunday all together and you worship the same football team. To the individual, the more different you are from each other, the better, as long as you can commune on this same wavelength. But for the tribe, shared value, food, principles are really key. The 3740, the channel of community. The 40 is the stomach, and in the tribe is where the way to a man's heart is through the stomach comes from. Think about all these tribal religious traditions where shared meals, whether it's the family coming together every Sunday or bigger communal festivals involving food, wine, laughter, arguments, everybody hugging and kissing each other and dancing, and meat as the centerpiece of the menu. Historically, the religious blood sacrifice consecrating this marriage contract that we have with mammals, enabling us to survive and live together in much larger groups than the bands of hunter-gatherers, smaller nomadic groups of a couple of hundred people. Think about the way that religion binds people together so strongly that it can unify empires across countries, across continents. In fact, it's probably the most powerful tool for mass control and homogenization is religion, and this keeping of an identity where everybody dresses in a certain way, eats or can't eat the same foods, and usually has sex within that community, right? Many places in the world where arranged marriages are still very normal, and if you marry somebody outside of your social class or religion or cult, then that's a huge problem for the whole family because it threatens to break the whole thing down. Sexually, getting the tribe to accept different ways of relating than their culture and that are hidden or suppressed within the family unit is extremely difficult. One of the reasons most tribes and religions find it so hard to accept homosexuality, for example, is because it doesn't conform or contribute to maintaining the traditional family unit, and it's non-reproductive. Therefore, they see it as some kind of threat and they think it's infectious, so it'll break down all of society, etc. But once the tribe do open up, and once they do accept differences and individuals, then they'll love you and support you like no one else. There's nothing in the collective that's such a strong bond, and the individual just wants to be left alone and do its freaky different thing. But for the tribe, family is everything, and once they welcome you in, they'll be there with you through thick or thin, just like they are with each other. Coming back to food, my partner Julie was a vegetarian for many, many years, and I grew up a vegetarian till I was 19 and had a lot of health issues, and eating meat basically saved my life. And Julie was a vegetarian because it's so difficult when you're so sensitive like this to the needs, the wants, the pain of animals. It's so difficult nowadays to find meat where the animal's been brought up and indeed killed with the respect that upholds our side of the bargain. There's a a deeply spiritual side of eating meat, which is really largely lost nowadays. You know, you go to the supermarket and you buy it, and you have no connection to the spirit of that animal. So I encourage you, if you've got a defined spleen, if you've got aspects of this circuit, if you've got a body that ancestrally needs to eat meat to be in optimal health, then the first tip to digest it better is offer a thought, a little prayer, a connection, whatever, to the spirit of that animal which has given you its life. And the second tip is that we all generally digest meat much better as a group in communities with our auras coming together. Someone has the 3740, gives the stomach that extra power for us all to get more nutrition out of it. So shared meaty meals are a really important part of tribes sticking together. And it's one of the ways, as we've been in a very tribal cycle for the last 400 years, and that's all breaking down. And one of the ways that the collective is breaking down and collapsing the support systems of the tribe and the family unit is by attacking eating meat and promoting this idea of veganism and vegetarianism, which is fine for some people. But bear in mind that the reproductive system is part of that tribal circuit, and it harms fertility. If you've seen a picture of a vegetarian's placenta compared to a meat eater's placenta, you feel really sorry for that fetus. All of the sexual hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, they're all based on cholesterol and having sufficient amount of healthy animal fats. And I say that with the utmost respect, having grown up in a family of very strict vegetarians, experimenting with veganism, and when I was 19, being forced by my body, according to its genetic composition and needs, to eat meat for my own health. So bear that in mind when the collective media lays down these kind of mass crazes, these ideas of everybody should follow this way or that. It's just as ignorant as the tribal customs that don't think. The collective just thinks this is what's logical for me, so everybody should be this way. And it doesn't care about the individuals that don't fit into that. And it doesn't care about the customs and traditions and identity of the tribe. And frankly, none of them's better than the other. We need all three functioning correctly. We need our tribal relationships to, we can't have healthy communities and societies without the tribe at the center of it, supporting each other and caring about each other. And we can't have anything new or beautiful and creative and artistic without those freaky individuals that don't fit in. And we can't explore what it means to be human as a whole, or what sexuality is as a whole, without the collective of sharing openly across the boundaries and rigid rules of the tribe. The other way the collective is deeply starting to break down tribal relationships in the last few years, of course, is through social isolation, lockdowns, masks, not being able to smell each other, replacing touch and real human connection with people that are using AI for emotional support. And so, of course, there's this backlash of the tribe holding on even tighter, religious fundamentalism, all of that trying to protect itself, and people saying we should go back to the traditional roles of the family unit and all of that. But evolution doesn't happen backwards. And each of these streams has their own dark side, including obviously the tribe. Think about the amount of sexual abuse that happens in the family, the suppression, the repression of sexuality, this inability for this tribal stream to go reach directly to the throat. The 40 is the gate of denial. I will support you or not. And it's also sexual denial. So that can be really fine and nice. Masturbation as a form of I don't need you, I can pleasure myself, and a way of contraception, but also denial as The creation of taboos, as in you can't talk about this at the communal dinner table. It's nothing like the collective circuit where nothing is off limits. I mean, look at all the things that are possible and shared publicly in pornography. And the dark side of that, obviously, is that it can be deeply harmful and destructive to the body and be completely empty of that emotional connection and love of the individual or the deep caring of the tribe. So yeah, each of these streams has their dark side. So bear that in mind if you're supporting one or the other, or you want to go back to traditional tribal family values. There's an inherent amount of oppression and control in that. Think of sex as a commodity, just like food and money and territory. Children as your property, your spouse as your property. There are still so many countries where a husband can beat a wife and not go to prison. It's even approved of in some religious books. So with all respect for the love and support and caring of the tribe, there's also this very oppressive, you will do what I say, we've agreed to marriage forever, and you'll just have to tolerate it because you signed that marriage contract paper. On the other hand, if the bargain, the contract is mutually supportive, this can lead to relationships that really build and create something together. The important thing is that if you've got this channel, the 3740 of bargains and agreements, that whatever relationship you go into, whether sexual or romantic or professional, that you get really clear about, hey, what the bargain is here, what's the arrangement, because there always is one. There's always some kind of bargain exchange between tribal people. And it's much better when that's clear and talked about and on the surface rather than implicit as some kind of emotional expectation that you never actually talked about, but then causes huge problems later. Anybody with that 19 is going to have this pressure in them to get their needs met. It's really healthy for them to always have a full fridge for a sense of security. And sex is equally seen as a need, just like food, a kind of responsibility, you could say, for each partner to do that for the other person. Whereas for the individual, it's more about your emotional connection, and you don't have to have sex that much at all. And for the collective, it's about sharing a variety of different experiences that you've taken the time to fantasize about and talk about and dream about, and then you actually go and try it out and you see if it's all that good or not. And then you make a vlog and you tell the whole world about it. We had sex on the stern of a speedboat that Steve was driving at 70 miles an hour, and it was a disaster. And then that goes into collective history as everybody do or don't do that because it's great or really disappointing. But for the tribe, sex, they don't talk about sex with other people. It stays within the relationship, within the family. It's challenging enough to talk about it between themselves. As we said, their main language is touch. So it can be quite challenging for a tribal relationship to have conversations about this subject. So bear that in mind if you're a relationship or intimacy coach, and make sure you establish the contact of holding hands before trying to converse about any issues in those areas. But what might be surprising to you is that the best oral and manual sex, the best hands, the most luscious sensual lips are to be found in the tribe, because once you get past reproduction, you obviously want to limit the amount of children that you have based on the amount of resources you have. So you get all these medieval housewife tales about how to satisfy your husband without reproductive penetrative sex. So I encourage you to explore those types of sex if you're very tribal. Hold each other tightly. The smells, the touches, the caresses, the kisses, the cuddles. If you've got aspects of this channel, which is the only eventual route to the throat for the tribe, the 21 is called biting through. And in my experience, these people really do like biting. Same if you got a 45. So that's something to explore. And this biting through, it's referring also to being able to hold on. Think about the willpower that's necessary to hold on to a marriage for 40 years, whether it's functional or dysfunctional. And in tribal society, that's obviously seen as a good thing the longer you can hold on to it, whether it's deeply loving and mutually supportive or really abusive. Hey, weird paradox. I have no aspect of this particular tribal stream, so marriage has zero appeal for me. As an individual, I care about being somebody as long as we're on the same wavelength, and if not, then I wouldn't want to be with them anymore. But I do have this will, this ego center here, and I recognize the willpower that's necessary to keep promises. And it's really important to recognize that 65% of people don't have a defined heart will center. So they're not here to prove anything. They're not here to make any promises. So bear that in mind if you've got an open ego and you're thinking of getting married or making any kind of big contracts or commitments, that you don't necessarily have that willpower, and it's going to put a huge strain on your heart if a promise or social pressure obliges you to keep going with something just because you said you would. If you've got an open heart and an open spleen, the open spleen means a sense of physical vulnerability. So you'll be flirting and looking for a partner to give you a sense of security. And even if they're abusive and oppressive to you, well, it's very difficult for the open spleen to let go of things, because of that fear of being vulnerable again and not having anybody again. And in combination with that open ego center, the lack of self-worth, you're going to feel a huge amount of pressure of what will other people think of me? Will the community reject me? What will I think of myself if I break this contract? So my advice to you would be, hey, remember, you've got absolutely nothing to prove. Follow your strategy and your inner authority, what's true for you, not what your mind thinks or the customs of the way you've been brought up. What's the most respectful and healthiest thing for your body? And if you're a beautifully tribal person and you feel like asking somebody, will you be mine forever and ever? Remember that possessiveness of the tribe. You know, I have this 45. I don't have other aspects of the tribal stream of marriage, but the voice, the 45, which is possessive. So I say, my Julie, I say, my partner. But that doesn't mean that I think I own them, which the other parts of me would find very weird indeed. But it's more this sense, if you think about the tribal circuit being on the inside and really representing the flesh of the body, the heart and the blood, the warmth. It's like you've taken somebody in so deeply to yourself that they're really almost a part of you. And so that's where the disrespectful, abusive side of, hey, your body is my body, so I can touch you as I will, etc. Or you're my child, so you will do as I say according to my principles, and I can do with you what I will. When you're with a tribal person like Sting or Leonardo DiCaprio, or say Princess Diana, think about how the public really felt this sense of emotional intimacy and like being part of a community with that person. The tribal wave is the warmest, most loving and cuddly and intimate emotional wave. But it's also, hey, if you cross a tribal person, they will either kill you or cut you off. And it can be the heaviest, coldest, bloodiest emotional wave as well on the other side. We've always have this binary. And this is why I've tried to emphasize this time both the lovely, wonderful side of tribal intimacy and sexuality and culture, and also its opposite. And we're going to see that each of these tribal, individual, collective sexual streams have got their own light and dark. But because the tribal system is the core, not just of the human design body graph, but the family is where we all grow up and come from and what forms society. So the principles, the level of fair exchange and mutual support, the level of suppression or taboo in your family, whether your parents are holding on to and providing for each other out of duty or out of actual love, is what's going to give you as an adult a healthy or not relationship with your own body and your sexuality. Remember, good and evil both originate in the family. One of the ways that the human design system encourages physical respect between people is sleeping separately in your own space, which the wealthiest families, the most privileged ones, have always done. And part of poverty is obviously the whole family sleeping in the same room and having no particular space for sexual emotional intimacy, which is also why it's so taboo, because there's no private space for it. But if you, your partner, or both of you are deeply tribal, it's so important to have a cuddle in the morning. Whoever wakes up first goes to the other's bed, and also in the evening before you separate, to have a really good, warm cuddle, lots of non-sexual touch to maintain the glue for your whole relationship, as well as being clear on what the mutual, respectful, sexual bargain is for each of you. What are your sexual needs? How can they be balanced between the two of you and sexual acts and masturbation in combination for the nation? Equally, if you're in a tribal group of friends or a professional workplace, think about the importance of shaking hands, high fives, hugs, physical contact. A tribal person will never trust you until they've touched and smelled you. So also beware of wearing too strong perfumes and fragrances, because then you won't be able to smell each other's body odor. A really important turn on for a tribal person. And when we're talking professionally, a tribal person simply can't make a deal, can't do business with somebody who they can't smell. So whilst I don't have particularly tribal sexuality, my inner authority is part of this other side, the splenic side of the tribal circuit. The 44 is the nose, physically and metaphorically. So I can smell if something's going to go wrong, smell if somebody's right for me or not. When I've gone on dates and the person has worn a too strong perfume, I really feel like I can't connect with them very well. When I've had a landlord who always wore really strong aftershave, I just couldn't get a sense of understanding where he was at, what the expectations were in our bargain. So touch each other, smell each other's armpits, have a nice roast dinner, surrender to your tribal sexuality, and I'll see you next time when we look at the beauty and ugliness of the romantic passion in the individual stream.